Hi, my name is Ricky Carson, and this is Generating Gender, a project about gender expression, what it means to the individual, and how it affects us in society as a whole. And for those of you guys who don't know what gender expression is, it is the way in which a person expresses their gender identity, typically through their appearance, dress, and behavior. So, for example, me, I am a cis man who identifies usually with more like masculine, aspects. That said, I do have a bit. I am in touch with my feminine side, and I will occasionally wear bright, flowy colors, and I will have my nails painted. Obviously, I don't have them painted right now, but it kind of just shows that it's not even like that's not even relevant. It's just how you portray yourself to other people. And the reason why I wanted to do this, there's a lot of bullshit out there, especially coming from the far right about anything that has to do with gender is immediately bad. Anything that like you're talking about gender, you're confusing people. And I just want to like clutter away all that like bullshit and stuff. And so initially this was going to be a documentary, but as I interviewed three people, they had just such insightful conversations and discussions in it that I had with them that I felt like I wanted to keep this in, and I kind of wanted to, and I knew from the get go that I wanted it to be more of like a come from a human aspect. That said, I did interview a gender studies professor, Susan Shaw, who she's not just a gender studies professor, she's accredited in many other works of academia, but I did interview her to have a professional take on what gender expression is and how it affects society as a whole. But I also wanted to interview some Gen Zers, some younger people who either have already kind of just like embraced their identity or are on a new path. So I interviewed in the second interview, I interviewed my friend Shayna and Evan, and they are such vibrant, colorful people, and I, I just like I wanted to like ask them questions about stuff kind of that I've always kind of wondered about in terms of how they present themselves and what their identity means to them. And so we got into a really interesting conversation, not just about them though, but about society and where they see like the times going, and I think it's quite insightful. So I'm going to be excited to share with you guys that. And then my third interview was with my one of my good friends, Alex. He's French, but he's basically lived around the world, and so he's a global citizen, as I like to call him. And he only recently is starting to explore his more fluid sides, and I thought that asking him now would be wonderful as someone as kind of like a like even though I'm very against linear like associations, I was just like, where I'm interviewing people who've already gone on that journey, already very sure about themselves. And then I'm interviewing someone who's kind of just like now starting out on that journey, and in a way, he's kind of reflecting me because the whole thing, like, it sounds weird, funny, silly when I say it like this, but the whole reasons why I wanted to do this project was because at the time I had only started recently wearing nail polish, and I, for the longest time, I didn't wear nail polish because I thought it would mean I was less of a man and stuff, and that internalized, I don't know, homophobia, like gender stuff, any like maybe even misogyny, that internalized stuff. I didn't like it, and I was like I was not. And again, it's silly because you're just talking about nail polish, but I didn't. I was upset that I was like letting the opinions of other people like keep me from doing something so mundane as like to paint my nails, and so that's what really sparked this project to do this. And so I'm really excited to share with you guys all the conversations. I'm not gonna lie, at some parts it can be a little bit slow, and but like I think that that's all right. It's a conversation, and in this hyper like active like media sphere, I think that we're kind of like always just on default trying to like just speed up through everything and like get to the point very fast, which don't get me wrong, like you'll understand the point, like everything I keep in here is very purposeful, but I just wanted to like say that and just let you two have like be mindful and just be open to all of this all these viewpoints, because I think, like as I alluded to earlier, I think a lot of like people in the world, at least in the Western world, for example, are like are good people and want to understand people and don't want to hate other people and kind of want to understand more about the world around them. That said, I grew up in a liberal bubble, so maybe I'm not really thinking that maybe I'm not a good example of the majority of people, but gender expression is how one presents themselves through mannerisms and outward appearances and stuff. And so even though it's like can be, even though people like tie it to like sexuality, you know, it has actually nothing to do with sexuality, which you'll hear more about, especially with Susan Shaw. And so yeah, I'll just, why don't we just dive right into the first interview?
Start recording. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, but I work at a club and I had the night shift from midnight to 8 a.m. And then I had a class from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. So I only got a few hours of sleep.
Oh.
So if I'm a little bit slow, please forgive me.
I hear you. I got a little mess in my hair there. All right.
Before we get into the interview, I was wondering if you would like to introduce yourself, share a little bit about your background and your achievements and stuff.
Okay. Well, my name is Susan Shaw, and I'm a professor of women, gender, and sexuality studies at Oregon State University. So I've been teaching at OSU for 26 years now, and I teach courses, pop culture studies. In fact, I do one on British murder mysteries and TV crime dramas, and another on gender, race. And then I do some feminist theologies and feminist biblical interpretation classes. So I've kind of tried to combine the religion and the women, gender, and sexuality studies. My background is a PhD in religious education from a Baptist seminary and a life before this one. And so I still enjoy, though, playing around with the two. And so my book that I'm working on right now is a theology book with a colleague, Grace G. Sun Kim, who's at Earlham School of Religion. And we're trying to use intersectionality as a tool to do theology. And in this case, we're trying to apply it to, I wrote with your mom and another friend a book on women in rock and roll. And then I've written a book on Southern Baptist women. And then I do some blogging for Ms. Magazine and for Baptist News Global. So you can see I still
really have articles everywhere, stretched everywhere.
Yeah. So that's me.
I feel like there is an audience that is willing to listen, especially amongst Gen Zers and millennials particularly. And in my own personal experiences and in class discussions, I realized a lot of people are just not aware or educated about how they are performing their gender, how society expects them to act or dress a certain way. And so I want this mini documentary to be a way to kind of open up dialogue and maybe to dispel some misconceptions about gender expression. And so why don't we get straight into my first question. Is what is the difference between gender expression, presentation, and gender identity? Because I feel like people who aren't too familiar with gender expression might confuse the two.
Yeah. So gender identity is how we feel on the inside. If we feel like we're, a man, a woman, non-binary, trans, gender non-conforming, I mean, there are all sorts of options for identities, but that's the internal sense of self. Whereas our gender expression or our gender presentation is how we perform our gender for the world to see. And those two things may or may not align. And that may change over one's lifetime too. One other important term is gender assignment. And that's what happens at birth when the doctor, the parents look at the body and based on what they see, say, oh, this is a boy or this is a girl. And again, that may or may not align with our gender identity and our gender expression. And so that's going to vary from person to person how that happens. And often the reason they don't align is someone's gender identity may not match the gender they were assigned at birth. And then they choose, and sometimes it can be a struggle whether or not they want to present their gender identity, if they want to continue to present their gender assignment, if that may vary depending on who they're with and where they are. And so it's all complicated. So it makes sense that people can be confused about it because, you know, it varies from person to person.
It pervades every facet of our life. And I think everyone can say that they have felt a general sense of pressure to perform the gender or the sex that they were born at. And I was like, my question is like, why are there societal pressures for men to behave or dress masculine and women to behave and dress feminine?
Yeah. So a feminist, I would say that gender becomes a way of structuring relationships. And so gender becomes one more way that we create power in relationships and create hierarchies. And so when we female at birth to be, you know, feminine, and we pressure people who were assigned male at birth to be masculine, that's really about maintaining a binary that keeps patriarchy in place. And so if we can maintain the illusion that people are so different, that men must be one way and women must be another, girls, boys, then we can justify those hierarchies that say, and men should be on top because they're just inherently better at all these things, and men need to have social power. And so it's really not even so much about individual people as it is about these larger structures that individual people live in and work in and are shaped by.
And resist. Yeah, because I would say, especially in the Western world, in the Western countries, we are in a generalization, we're having a very liberal progressive movement in terms of, you know, allowing people to, or giving people permission or the tools to express themselves freely. And I was wondering if, due to this movement and maybe others that I might be neglecting, do you think that people are becoming more accepting of people dressing in a gender fluid manner?
That probably depends on where you live. I think, see, you and I get shaped by the fact that, you know, we've spent a lot of our lives in Oregon and in the Willamette Valley specifically, where I think there is generally a little more openness to diverse sexual and gender presentations. You know, I think other places it's probably hard. I think younger people are probably more open than, you know, older people, though I don't want to make too broad of a generalization, because you have people like me and your mom who, you know, are cool and open with these things. And so, but I think that I do get this sense, for example, with my own students who are very much traditionally 18 to 22 and are far more aware of the issues and further ahead in their thinking than my students were, you know, 10, 15, 20 years ago. And so I think that in many places there is greater openness. And even in the most conservative places, people still see this in the culture. And I think, again, just familiarity can begin to create some openness. And so I'm optimistic that we can kind of move the needle forward on people being more open to letting people be who they are. There's a feminist scholar named John Stoltenberg who basically argues, you know, that we should have as many sexualities and genders as we do people, and that we shouldn't try to put people in these boxes of gender and sexuality, but rather just let people be, which I think is a fine idea.
Yeah, I think that is fine too. I don't know if you're too well conversed about like certain subgroups on, like, for example, TikTok, but there's this huge, like, I would say internal debate about like how many genders are there, how many orientations are there. And some people kind of take it too literal of like, but then at the same time, like if people identify a certain way and maybe it's a bit unconventional, unheard of for someone else, then, you know, who's that person to say that, you know, that person's wrong. And Harry Styles in the December issue of 2020 of Vogue he was on the cover and he was wearing a dress, and that kind of sparked a huge media outburst on the left and the right. The left was seeing how progressive it was and it was empowering, and they were excited that it was like breaking down stereotypes, and it was going to be a cultural moment. Boys, men could see someone of such high stature as Harry Styles and, look elegant and beautiful. While on the right, they were saying, this is feminizing men, and it's kind of like it was like it's tearing the country apart. And so I was wondering what your thoughts were about.
That's something we were just talking about this in class this week, not about Harry Styles, but about this issue of appearance. And my hope is someday you go into the department store and there's not like a men's section and a women's section. There are just clothes that come in such a range of sizes that the smallest, skinniest person or the shortest, chubby person like me, or the tallest, widest, fullback could find the dress or the pants or the suit to fit, and nobody would care what they put on. And my preference of loafers would come in every size, and so the clothes wouldn't be gendered anymore, and we could just wear what we want to wear. Will we get that world? I don't know. I mean, certainly we see these places, where there are lines of gender neutral clothing, or these places where people have challenged the expectations about what we're supposed to wear. But I think that's such an important place to resist gender norms is by the clothing selections that we make. And I think that's why people who are more conservative get upset about it, is because they recognize that when Harry Styles puts on a dress, or, somebody else comes out, Ellen DeGeneres wears a suit, that it's challenging the gender norms on which social structure is built. But I just want us to be able to wear what we want to wear and be able to find the sizes that we need that would look good on us.
Is there anyone that, I know you mentioned Ellen DeGeneres, but is there anyone like celebrities or well-known people that are quite well known for like experimenting in their gender expression?
Oh gosh, see, now I'm going to go blank. Now, some early on ones, Boy George created all sorts of stuff when, he I think he goes by, he came on the scene, in the 80s, and was very, I would say, sort of non-binary in gender expression, and was, I think as outwardly queer as you could be at that time and still, have Billboard top 40 hits. And so I think that was a good example. And you see Boy George today, and the sort of the hair is gone, but there's still the really nice eye makeup and just very sleek and stylish. I know examples, and now I'm going to I think Billie Eilish is somebody who has, sort of refused gender in his, though I think, all that pressure's gotten to her a little bit because things aren't quite as baggy and all as they used to be. But then there's the blowback, when she tries to express herself a little differently.
That was it Vogue cover that she was on, where she was wearing the corset, and like I thought she looked stunning in that, but a lot of people kind of was like, she went from wearing this like tomboy like aesthetic to like baggy clothing to like wanting to embrace her sexuality and her body in another way.
But I noticed today, like a lot of my male students, gay or straight, I don't think it matters, will wear nail polish on occasion. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me turn that off. Where did it go? Shoot. Okay, off with the phone. I usually have that off, and of course I forgot that. All right, so I'll go back with that. So sorry about that. Yeah, I mean, a lot of my men students, whether they're straight or gay or whatever, will wear nail polish, for example. And so like when I was growing up, that would have gotten you beaten up if you were a guy, but now it's sort of no big deal, and I think a lot of people think it looks kind of cool, and but all of this takes place, of course, within a context of capitalism, which is invested in sort of putting pressure on us to appear certain ways and then to change our appearance because it gets us to buy stuff, and so. Yeah. You always have to kind of take all of this with that sort of grain of salt about the role of commerce in whatever fashion choices we're making to express gender.
Speaking about sexuality, is there a correlation between sexuality and gender expression at all?
Actually, they're completely different. So sexuality is about who you're attracted to, whereas gender is about sort of who you are, and who you are can be attracted to a lot of different kinds of people. And so how you express, whether it's sort of as a binary man or woman or non-binary, that has nothing to do with who you might be attracted to. And they all kind of get lumped together in the LGBTQ, I think, because they're all in some way about gender, but they're different things.
Okay. Are there historical periods before our time where we have seen big changes in gender expression in terms of like what is acceptable for men to act and wear, and same for women?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's changed across time and it's different in different cultures. I mean, you think about, gosh, the time of Mozart and the wigs that men would wear, or the fancy clothes, or you think about Scottish men who still wear kilts, or, people in different cultures men who've worn flowing robes. So I think that it's very culturally related about how people present gender. And let's see, gosh, I had something else I was going to say. So a good example of that, actually from England, where you are right now, is a woman who was named Anne Lister. And she's become a little bit famous now because there was a show on, I think, HBO called Gentleman Jack that's about her. And that happened because she kept these copious notes about her life. And I think it was maybe a relative who found them. And now they've been edited into a book. And then the book was turned into this movie. So Anne Lister wore a top hat, and from the waist up, usually wore a man's coat and tie and shirt, and then would wear the skirts. And she inherited a vast estate up at Shipton Hall, which is up near Halifax. And she just did what she wanted. And so she was lesbian. And so she had women lovers, and none of this was terribly, people have always defined genders and sexualities differently. So for example, in Samoa, there are people who are known as fa'afafine, and they're born, anatomically with boy parts, but they're raised as girls, and they're not trans, they're not gay in the way we think of gay, they're fa'afafine, which is something that is culturally unique in that area. And so there are lots of examples of people like that culturally who are very different. There's a group in Albania of women, I forget the word, but they're sworn virgins. And this isn't so popular now, but back 100 years ago. And there's still some alive, though. And these women basically live as men, and they don't get married. I think some of them have managed to marry women, but this kept them from heterosexual marriage. And then they presented as men, they held jobs, they did the work that men did. And so all of that, I think, suggests that gender is something that's very much related to time and culture.
Definitely. It sounds like it. What advice, if any, would you give to someone who wants to experiment with how they present themselves, but don't necessarily know how to best ease into that or test the waters?
Yeah, I think it's really important to find supportive groups, supportive places. So LGBTQ centers are really good to find other people who are going through. If you aren't in a place where you can get to those, thankfully we've got all kinds of things on social media that can help. I think there are probably people on TikTok who will give you advice about how to do your hair, or try makeup, or try clothes if you want to play with that. And there's certainly a lot of books out there that people can read to sort of learn the history of all of this and have a sense of the community that they are wanting to be part of and feel part of. But the main thing, I think, is to reach out as much as you can, because I think often trying to find out who we are in isolation can be really difficult, because we think, oh, I'm the only one, or nobody's ever felt this before, or something's wrong with me. And those things aren't true, but sometimes we need other people to tell us that. And so I think reaching out to those places that can provide support is really, really important.
Thank you.
I would like to, in between the next interview, I'd like to share a little quote with you. So this is a quote by Kate Bornstein, and she says, "It's easy to fictionalize an issue when you're not aware of the many ways in which you are privileged by it," which I believe is just like that quote is just, I don't know how to express how real it is. I really like that quote because I think it encapsulates the reality for a lot of people, is that you usually don't know how privileged you are until it's either taken away from you or addressed to you directly. And so I think that in terms of like when it comes to gender expression. You know, if you are a cis straight person who is a man, like who like fully like subscribes to the masculine aesthetic, you know, then you don't understand how other people who may not be exactly like you are actually like struggling, or like they're trying to thrive but society is telling them otherwise. And so I thought that is a very interesting quote that I wanted to just share. It's nothing too serious, but I think it I think it brings up some valid points. So this next conversation is with Shayna and Evan. And you know, as you can tell from the last video, they're all done on Zoom. So like forgive like I don't know, like the graininess of the footage or stuff. I'm doing my best in post production to fix the volume, so hopefully that's not a big problem for you guys. But yeah, this conversation is, I think, one of my favorites out of the three that we did. I know I know I don't know like shade to Susan blah, no shade to Susan, but they just, it kind of just like, it's a roller coaster of topics and thoughts and beliefs and experiences, but still it kind of all is really hones in into one space. And yeah, so here you go.
Do it. Recording in progress.
I'm making a fire so we look fancy.
All right, chill. Sounds good. It's 4 a.m. right now.
Damn,
Oh my god.
Ricky. What?
Are you okay?
Yeah, I took a nap. I went to sleep at like 8 and woke up at like 3.
Oh my gosh. Okay, cool. Well,
Yeah, no, it's all good. Nice.
okay, this lighting makes my neck look.
What do you mean?
I see like lines on it.
Can you see the fire? Ooh, fancy.
I mean, I think we all have lines on our necks, Shayna.
I feel like a dragon.
I have lines.
Cool.
Yeah, here.
Yeah.
Move this way. Get that fire right in between us like we're fancy. Fuck yeah. I
It
don't
looks
know,
so
this is like-
colorful.
that's what I was saying. I'm like, no, this is aesthetic.
Mhm.
Where's my bong?
It's above the fireplace.
Yo. All right, Ricky.
All right. Damn, that looks so cozy. I wish I was over there right now.
I know, right? We miss you.
Evan, all right. Can you get more into the frame, not into the flame, into the
It's
frame?
into the flame, you
I am-
ginger.
I am the flame.
So basically what my documentary is about is it's about gender expression and how like it's like basically like my overall motive is to kind of express to people that gender expression is by nature just fluid, and that how you define it is very personalized. And so when when I'll be asking you these questions, I really want to hear it from your own personal standpoint, as well as being like aware of how like general society views you and what you think is like what you see as the norm, but what you think should be the new norm in terms of acceptance and stuff. But basically, I just want this to be like a conversation. I just want you to be yourselves. I chose you guys to be yourselves. So yeah.
Just hit some bong on camera.
You know, I might get some laughing points, a few extra points for that. I'll put a disclaimer: they are in Oregon, so it is legal.
USA. I'm kidding.
Yes. Oh my god.
We're allies in this war.
Oh yeah.
We're
Okay.
no W words.
Okay.
No W words.
No. Knock on some fucking wood. Appease the woodland fairies.
Mhm.
Okay, so okay, Shayna. So you first. So, in what ways do you express your gender, like through clothes, mannerisms, appearance?
So I find it hard to answer that question because to me, clothing and mannerisms and people's appearance isn't like gender specific. So instinctually, I would say, oh, I wear skirts, I have long hair, I wear big lashes and makeup and glitter and heels and all that fun stuff. But just because somebody wears that doesn't mean that they're female. So um, I identify as female. I'm very feminine. Sometimes I have a more masculine side, but I mostly am feminine. And so, yeah, yeah, yeah.
And Evan, what?
Yes.
How would you kind of like? How do you like express yourself? How do you express your gender? And is it like similar in terms of how Shayna does, in the sense that, you're you kind of do fall into a masculine category, but you still express yourself in, I guess, like against, like, you're not really conservative in terms of
Mhm.
how you dress.
Yeah, yeah, it's a little different. I have face tattoos, so it's the tattoos are a form of expression themselves. And I feel like whenever it comes to tattoos, there is no gender expression. It is a form of art that art doesn't really have a gender. And it's just a form of expression. I think the same thing could just go for clothes in general. It's how I express, but I say like the most like masculine specific thing about me is that I grow a mustache. Growing facial hair out, um, rocking that kind of look, wearing, coats and stuff like that. Whereas in summertime or something like that, I do wear stuff that is sometimes considered feminine, like crop tops and short shorts and stuff like that. But I express my masculinity through my mustache.
And what made you like personally want to have a mustache?
Um,
My kitten's being weird. I'll be right back.
what makes me want to have a mustache is it's a part of me that makes me feel like I don't know. It is. I would say it is a form of gender expression. Growing out my mustache, growing out that facial hair, and yeah, I think that is like that. That would be the closest to masculine gender expression.
Right. Cool. Shayna, let's go back to you. What do you think are the societal, why do you think there are societal pressures, for example, for men to dress in a masculine way and women to dress in a feminine way?
So I know that historically, transgender people who were gender fluid, who didn't subscribe to those feminine or
Sorry, could you start over again? I was having
yeah,
a
that's
screen
fine.
problem. Sorry.
That's okay. So I know so I know that historically there sorry, hold on. So I know that historically gender used to be very gender fluidity used to be very widespread and very accepted. There were even some cultures that used to worship transgender people, who thought of them as people who had been reincarnated into different genders, so they were able to connect to the genders better. And so they were revered as godly. And so there was really great developmental science when it came to transitioning transgender people. And then the rise of Nazi Germany came and the fascism came, and they were put into concentration camps, homosexuals, anyone who didn't fit into that perfect box that the Germans had in mind. And I shouldn't say Germans, I should say Hitler, really. But after that, I think that kind of lingered, that fear, because it was so prevalent for such a long time that these people are going to be taken over and they're evil and they were villainized and alienated for so long, that there's kind of this like trauma that exists within society of people who express themselves differently. And that Nazi idealism has really stuck with people for a very long time. And I think that the history regarding transgender people and gender fluid people in cultures was completely erased. I didn't learn about it until I Google searched it. I had never heard about it before. And that ideology has like stuck with people for a very long time and been pushed on people for a very long time.
Do you know why maybe it has been so constant in society, and why we kind of are lacking change and growth from it?
I think that people just don't know that there was a time before that I think there's a lot of people that have this misconception that it's a new thing, that we're being brainwashed and told, just like influenced by this what's the word, propaganda, for lack of a better word, by the LGBT community and all that. So there's definitely a group of people who don't know the history, don't care, they don't look into it, and they just kind of believe this Western culture of Christianity. So yeah.
Evan, as a man, as a person who identifies himself as a man, as someone who grew up as a man, what were your thoughts about societal pressures to perform your gender, you specifically as a man, but for a women to perform being feminine?
Let's see here. I would say a lot of it has to do with culture. Let's see here. So being in like Southern California and stuff like that, there was a lot of like, hip hop culture over there. There was a lot of culture from all over the world. And there was a lot of influences and that, in like the California that came from different cultures. And a lot of it was different. A lot of it was very different, like skinny jeans, that was a different thing at a point in time. And I remember a point in time, like YG, the rapper, he was one of the first rappers to start wearing the skinny jeans, and he got roasted by a lot of gang members and a lot of other rappers in the hip hop industry for wearing skinny jeans. He used to call them names for it and roast them about it. And so because that was a normal in that culture, basically it became normal for other people in like school, growing up, if they saw people wearing skinny jeans, then the people who entertained that idea would then share that, basically share the same ideas just from that cultural aspect. And I think that it goes further than that, because it moves up the ladder, even with like differences in styles and different forms of expression, like Lady Gaga and her bizarre looks and fashion. She used to get roasted a lot just because it was different. So I feel like a lot of it is because it's different, and a lot of people feel different from it. So maybe it's more about people seeing it different as bad, and they need to start kind of taking it as a good thing. And I think that I've seen that, it's been more accepted as a good thing. All these differences have been more accepted throughout the years growing up in in Southern California. Southern California, I'm telling you, it has a lot of culture. I mean, when it comes to living there, a lot of people say it's hell and all this stuff. Traffic sucks. Yeah, prices for rent suck. It's where all the fake rich people live because it costs so much just to live there. It'll go bankrupt. But when it comes down to culture, I don't think I've seen so much culture in one state. And it's a good place to see it all, because you got like Harry Styles over there. You got all these other, big artists that are coming in to Hollywood, and then YouTubers, everybody in the fashion industry, bringing all their styles together to do all these big collabs. So I feel like it's like one of the epicenters of fashion for sure.
You brought up Harry Styles, and I don't know if you remember, but on the December 2020 issue of Vogue, he was wearing a dress on it. And like, as you were saying, like how California is kind of like this cultural center, how lots of people are coming together to create art, to express themselves. Do you think that society is becoming more accepting of people who not only express the gender in the way that they best believe it suits them, but express it in a more fluid manner?
I feel like the stubborn people are dying out. The less open people, the less judgmental people are dying out. It's I think there is you can't teach an old dog new tricks, so to say. So that older generation that was based around the norms that created the society that judged based off of visuals, clothes, and all that kind of stuff, because that generation is dying out, and the new generations are coming in with all the new cultures, sharing these new fashions and these new designs. Everybody's relating with each other more often. It is definitely moving in a more positive, direction. Of course, there's still going to be those few that are going to be like the haters, but it's just because they feel different.
And Shayna, what are your thoughts?
Well, I definitely think that it's getting better. I think that we're making progress in educating people and getting more exposure, more representation out there. However, I do have to acknowledge, the laws trying to be passed currently in Texas, I think in Florida as well, where if a transgender child is in school and a teacher notices, they're to be reported for child abuse. The parents are supposed to be reported for child abuse if they see a transgender child who's allowed to express themselves that way. So there's definitely step backs being taken, some limitations, definitely for sure. And, being online or knowing young transgender people who are in school who are still experiencing bigotry and being targeted. I know a young non-binary person who had non-binary flags on their backpack, and kids would take them off of it. And it's just things like that where I think there is bigotry being passed down. And I think a lot of it has to do with the social media as well, and just kind of trying to fit in. Kids are trying to fit in since the day they're born. It's a survival tactic. And so whatever we teach our kids does stick, but I think that people are becoming more open-minded as they venture out into the world for sure.
And I feel like, just going off of that, with the old ways are dying out. The old generations are starting to just go away, right? And which is creating room for these newer generations to come forward with their ideas. And yeah, you're right. The bigotry is sometimes It's like kind of passed out down through the generation. It's generational, but eventually, because we're seeing all the big pushes in the entertainment industry, that is where all the kids are watching the videos, all their idols are, and because they're seeing all their idols come out with gender norms, and they're getting all this like gender fluid, like Harry Styles, right? YG and his skinny jeans, right? Now I see a bunch of people and gangsters up in LA wearing skinny jeans, right? It's like there's these trends that are being started from a lot of this stuff that is impacting the newer generations. And soon enough, I feel like the ones that are the bigots, the ones that are being like judgmental towards all the gender fluid styles, I feel like pretty soon they're going to be the different ones. And soon that's going to almost force change, because it would seem stupid to be in a room full of 100 people where there's gender fluid and you're the one person that doesn't like it.
Yeah. Shayna, back to you. Should people be free to express themselves, and why?
Absolutely. I think that it is essential to human nature, human basic needs. Like, if you're not able to express yourself, there's kind of this sense of uncertainty and like you're not safe to exist. And then that you have to have those basic levels there to grow. So if you are not at a basic level able to even comfortably express how you feel, then you're not going to be able to build those other layers as well, or maybe even at all. So I think it's a basic human right to be able to express yourself how you see fit.
And Evan, what are your thoughts? Should people be free to express themselves, and why?
No, because this is a democracy. I'm kidding. Get your shit together now. Yeah, definitely. It goes with your identity for sure. And if you're going off of a false identity, then you're most likely willing to run into an identity crisis at some point in your life, and that is bad for your mental health. So being 100% and confident with your identity, expressing yourself and who you see yourself as through your styles, through art, through your decisions in life. All this stuff is just your free will. This is your freedoms. And when it comes down to the political aspect of things, I feel like it's something they need to understand, is that it does have an impact on the emotional side of psychology, because the emotions have an impact on your psychological health. And being able to express yourself and being 100% clear with your identity, all of that impacts that aspect of the psychological health. And I don't feel like there's much attention to that in politics.
And this is the last question. Shayna, now I'm fucking blanking out on the last question. Shayna, what would your advice be to people who feel like they want to express themselves in a way that maybe goes against the fray, but they're not really sure how to, dip their toe into the water, how to start approaching that?
For sure. I would say do it in the comfort of your own home if you can. If you can't do that, try to find a safe place that you can go to where you can express yourself, whether it be experimenting with makeup, experimenting with art, watching movies that tell you or educate you a little more on gender fluidity and ways you can express yourself. Definitely surround yourself with people who aren't afraid to express themselves. And if anyone is giving you crap about expressing yourself in a non-harmful way to other people just by you existing, then you shouldn't be around those people. And you should unapologetically be able to express yourself however you want. And just try to find a good support system so you can do that.
Evan, what would your advice be?
To someone who's trying to learn how to express themselves, but they really haven't found their path yet.
Yeah.
Let's see here. So I've been born, ever since I was born, I've been a redhead. And ever since South Park came out, I've been a ginger. And ever since then, I just kind of had to grow to learn that everybody's going to have their opinions. And, it's better to just take the negative stuff as, the grain of salt, just kind of let it fresh off the shoulder a little bit. And then when it comes down to who you spend your quality time with, spend it with the people that inspire you and the people that motivate you. And and these people that motivate you and inspire you are most likely the ones that relate to you the most. And if they relate to you the most, then it wouldn't only be their confidence that motivates you to express yourself, but in expressing yourself with that group of people or that said person, you're also gonna motivate them and inspire them to come out further. And it creates this situation where you're hanging out with the people that best represent you. Because why would you wouldn't want to hang out with people who don't? So it would feel fake. However, diversity is good. There's been a lot of times where I've had a lot of friends that I didn't share, a lot of opinions with when it came to style or anything like that. Especially tattoos. I had a lot of friends that didn't agree with tattoos. But at the end of the day, I think of it as, we all have opinions. Some are not nice, but they're just opinions. And when it comes down to what makes me happy, people's opinions don't make me happy. It's what I think. And just kind of living for yourself and not for others is a good mentality to have when doing this. And it makes it a lot easier to find those communities you relate to, because you're not trying to impress someone you don't relate to. So it's be yourself, you'll find your people. You might be lonely here and there, but they will come eventually.
And kind of adding to what Evan said too, I think that if someone's going to be expressing unhappiness towards you for you just existing, that's something wrong with them, and that's not something that you need to take to heart at all, because obviously they need to work on that themselves, and that has nothing to do with you at all.
Well, thank you guys so much for all the insightful responses in the interview. I appreciate it so much. I'm gonna start with. No, it's just like I went from like not doing shit really to like having to do all the shit.
Yeah, story of my fucking uni life, man.
Essentially, like we're having a conversation, but it's also being recorded type of thing. So
Yeah, I'm gonna be careful about what I say.
Yeah, I think you're very just honest by nature, so it shouldn't be a problem.
Yeah. But you also haven't seen me in very see that the weed's gonna be a problem though. I'm not gonna lie, I'm fucking high, bro. You called me 30 minutes earlier as well. The like more formal situations. You haven't really met me,
No, I haven't. I only know the messy, sexy, sloppy.
Sexy. Okay. Well, fair. Well, I'll be careful.
Let me get back to my on track. It's too comfortable with you, Alex. Like, fuck.
There's a few things I have to say, I guess, on this. Like, first of all, like, personally, I've always been a person that saw a lot of of my influence of how I dress in general, by the perception also of the people around me, and also by what I thought looked good on me. So I mean, at the moment where I am at my life, being somebody that's relatively advanced in my sexuality, etc. Whenever I want to dress, for example, or show off more like my masculine features and stuff like that, I would wear what I guess society and my own view over the topic considers masculine, or what show offs my masculine features. And sometimes whenever I feel like more empowered with my feminine side, or expressing like more willing to express that side, I would wear, I guess, clothes and attires that would showcase and show off my the femininity and that part that is very much part of me also. But I guess what's pretty interesting about this would be that overall, I mean, there's something to say about this. Overall, because of how society is and how I've been in general most of my life, I do tend to be more comfortable in clothes that society considers the norm for people with my body, for example. So more like a male. I mean, I guess I'm a male, so yeah. But but yeah, that's pretty much it. Personally, I don't really like. I'm not, once again, exactly sure what you mean by expressing my gender and stuff like that. But it's more of like how I feel, and also like what people say look good on me or whatever. A lot of the times when I get a lot of compliments, for example, on a very feminine feature of mine, it definitely makes me more willing to showcase it and wear stuff that would, once again, by society be considered very feminine. But I do, in some sort, agree that some clothes definitely do showcase my feminine side more than others. Typically, female clothing, you know what I mean? But yeah.
Speaking about femininity and more feminine features, obviously I do see that your nails are painted, and
Yeah.
one of the things that actually kind of motivated me to make this documentary was the fact that I had like this whole like internal debacle in my head about whether or not I wanted to get my nails painted, if it would make me seem less masculine or not. And like you can't tell now because they're clear, but I used to have black ones. But obviously I got over that. But that kind of leads me into the next question I have from you is like, why do you think there are societal pressures for men to dress masculine, behave masculine, and women to dress feminine?
Okay, that's probably a very complex question to answer in a way. I guess I see two main reasons, maybe. So first of all, I guess there's that whole like patriarchal influence where, like, I guess femininity is kind of like looked down upon, especially if you're a man, you know. And also like, yeah, women being object of desire and stuff like that, within like that logic, they had to always be like very sexy and showcase those feminine features. So and men weren't really like, they had to, in their way, like not showcase, like not seem feminine. And I guess by that, nowadays that has transformed into also showcasing the male body. But I guess like more recently in our world, in the world I grew up in, like I guess society, like with feminism and how, for example, like it has become a symbol, like that femininity, etc., etc. Like typically, I was looking to buy boots recently, and it's very hard nowadays for men to buy like biker leather boots. Like for like they're literally like female sections, and the prices are different for like a few changes in the fabric. You know what I mean? And it's much more expensive for male, which is doesn't make any sense. And like I guess it's just because in our society now, it's like instead of like transforming it into like sort of an equal standard, we have like divided. So now like males have to be like men, you know, but and women have to be women and they're independent and they don't like interact kind of like, so there's a lack of like connection between the two, when in the end like there's no real logic, because that's not how people work. Once again, like I am the typical example of a person that can both be feminine and masculine whenever I feel like it, or yeah, that's it. So yeah, I mean, I'm not quite sure exactly how you wanted me to answer the question, but I think there's once again many reasons. But from my perspective, the things I live on a daily basis, I would say that once again, like there's a lot of pressure to like be two distinct entities. You know, you can't just like male clothes are for male and female clothes are for females. So like
It's
this,
definitely in the department stores,
yeah,
they're very marketed specifically towards one
yeah,
gender
exactly.
or the other.
So,
And so
yeah,
there's
so
not
that,
much,
yeah.
there's not much room for crossover. You say that you dress kind of like in a fluid manner per se, and like in a sense, like, if you're feeling more feminine or masculine, then that will probably reflect on what you wear that day.
Personally, it's not necessarily as, I mean, it can be, yeah, sure. But I mean, I also like, I don't know how to explain. Like, for me, once again, like for me, expressing my feminine side on the daily is not necessarily something that I feel, for first starter, comfortable with towards like the eyes of others. You know what I mean? Because I already get like, even for this, you know what I mean? There's a lot of just like people stare and stuff like that, and it's, I don't mind, you know what I mean? But this to many people is considered feminine. Personally, I can't really detach myself also from that notion fully, you know what I mean? Like I do look at my hands now and perceive them as much more feminine than when I don't have nail polish, because I've been used to seeing.
Would you say that though, like society as a whole is becoming more accepting of people, not only in your position where, you're a male wearing like nail polish, but just people dressing in a more gender fluid manner?
Personally, I wouldn't really say so in the end, because once again, like the everything, like the clothing industry and how, like it, to me, like that is in the end pretty new to the LGBTQ plus world in general. Like I and that's a world where really like this is well represented and well expressed, etc. This whole like gender fluid and dressing in both feminine and masculine way, and not seeing this sort of barrier actually of gender, you know what I mean, of being once again neutral. It's like for other people in the general of the population, I would say it's once again it's very separated between male and female in both the industry and the thinking, and there's not a lot of room in the end for like the understanding, you know what I mean? They perceive it, for me, like they perceive it as something that is other, that is different, as something that doesn't concern them. So it's not a problem that the general society is actually trying to change, because they don't feel part of that problem. I don't know.
Would you say that in 2022, society in general is more accepting than say the 1950s?
Of course, but once again, that's not what I was trying to say. Of course, overall change is happening, and every day in that specific field, it is getting better. But I don't personally think that as a society in general, because I am also seeing like this, like the globe, you know what I mean? Like in the West, that's fine, you know what I mean? It's very nice that in the West it's getting a bit better, but overall, I find it very difficult to say that it is getting better at a rate. Well, it's not getting better at a rate that is fast enough for me to really see that it's changing. You understand what I mean?
I mean, that's also like the key distinction, because I should have clarified more specifically about the West, but
yeah, you know what, once again, even like personally, I think that even in the West, like it's very hard, like something being represented and something like change doesn't mean that it's, because even in the younger generations, even of people our age, there are a lot of people who are completely unaware of, even in general, the problem of like gender clothing and everything that is related to what we talked about. It doesn't exist, you know what I mean? And I mean, obviously, if you ask me, is it better than in the 1950s? Obviously, but the sexual revolution was in the 70s. It's been a long time since then. And personally, I in 20 years since the early 2000s, there was some change. I mean, we see icons in pop culture recently, etc. You know, it's a big thing, but I also see a lot of like anger and like judgment from other people, you know, like from people that once again they vote, they're in positions of power, etc., etc. So I don't think that in our current state it is actually like the mindset overall of our general population isn't evolving that much. It is obviously for many people, but those are individuals. You understand? I'm talking about like us as a global society and like institutionalized problems as well in the midst of all of this, you know. But
as you as an individual person in your day-to-day life encounters with other people, would you say that you are complacent in gender norms and how people can express themselves, talk about expressing themselves through their gender, or would you say you push the envelope a bit with your interactions with people?
what do you mean push the envelope?
Like, are you complacent in just propagating, you know, the patriarchal norms of, you know, if you're a man, dress like a man, if you're a woman, dress like a woman, or do you push the envelope? Do you kind of say like, hey, you know, this is actually what gender fluidity is, or maybe like, yo, like, yeah, my nails are painted, but that doesn't mean I'm any less manly.
Yeah, of course, the latter. I mean, I was personally even in the middle of what you just said. Like, I've had, like, personally, the nails is also a pretty new thing. And, like, that exact thought, like, oh, does it make me less manly? No, I don't think at all. And personally, it's not even how I perceive the world nowadays. I really just, once again, try to express, like, my body and how I look and my looks, and like make myself and the people around me comfortable and enjoy my presence and my body and everything that I have to offer in general, regardless, once again, of gender norms and stuff like that nowadays. I think it's become a lot more apparent, once again, more in my private life, because personally, I don't see society being very accepting of that much. But nails and jewelry and stuff like that, yeah, it's nice, definitely.
Do you think people should be free to express themselves, and why?
100%. Yeah, of course, everybody should be free to express themselves, for the reason that I don't, like a lot of things in life, people should just leave others alone and to their own, you know, preferences, whether like they want to dress like that or be that, etc. As long as it doesn't, this doesn't, I mean, it's not as long as it doesn't harm them in any way, like others. It's just sort of like when you shouldn't look at another and be bothered by their presence because of how they look, for example, or something like that, because they're not harming you in any way, because they're doing that mostly for themselves and the people in their circle, and not for strangers, for example. And once again, I don't see why something that doesn't even interact in the world of somebody should in any way bother them. So of course, people should be free to dress and express themselves how they want, because it's their private lives and it shouldn't be a problem. Yeah.
What advice would you give someone who is potentially beginning their journey and expressing themselves in a more authentic way? Obviously, like you've started your journey already, and like, what would you say to someone who doesn't know where to start?
That's a very good question and a very difficult question, because once again, I don't consider myself somebody that, you know, is once again, I mean, maybe a little bit now, but advanced enough to give advice to others like that. But I would say that overall, like most things in life, like the biggest advice I would get is not like to lose confidence in yourself, to always like, you know, remember where you came from and all the struggles that you have, and believe that you can like advance and overcome all these thoughts and everything and make sense of it. And that even if you face yourself with, a big boulder of emotion or a big mountain of problems and stuff like that, if you take it little by little and you slowly advance at your own rhythm, you'll get through it, whatever it is, and you'll definitely become a better person at the end, because that's how humans are, so that's great.
All right. Thank you. That was the last of it.
All right. Cool.
Perfect. I'm gonna end.
I just wanted this project to be like just to be informative, because I feel like a lot of people don't really talk about gender expression, and I don't think a lot of people question um, why they dress a certain way or why they behave a certain way, or maybe they do and they just don't question if they could really change any of that. And again, there's lots of people around the world who aren't able to because they don't live in a free society, and so, you know. But for the people who can, I really implore them to really continue this conversation, to push the envelope, and to really step into your power, because at the end of the day, we're all people. We're all just wanting to have a good life. We're all wanting to love and be loved, and it shouldn't matter how we look or how we act while doing that, as long as we're not harming anyone and we're just being true to ourselves. Then I think that's all you can really ask of us. So yeah, thank you so much for watching this, and yeah, peace.